The sun burns high over Willow Bend, a fierce orb scorching the golden plains, where grass sways like a sea of whispered prayers. Dust hangs in the air, clinging to the crooked crosses of a small cemetery perched on the town's edge, where shadows stretch long and mournful. Clara Monroe, 34, stands before a fresh grave, her silhouette frail yet unyielding against the vast horizon. Her auburn hair, streaked with premature gray, spills from a faded bonnet, catching the wind like embers. Her homespun dress, once a vibrant blue, now dulled to gray by dust and toil, flutters around her slight frame. Her hazel eyes, rimmed with the raw sting of tears, gleam with a quiet, unbreaking fire. In her calloused hand, she clutches a woven bracelet, its red and yellow threads frayed but vivid, crafted by her son, Ben, before fever stole him 3 weeks ago. Her boots, worn thin at the soles, sink slightly into the dry earth, as if the plains themselves hold her grief. A voiceover, soft yet searing, pierces the silence. No grave can hold a mother's love, but some vows demand a toll heavier than the heart can bear. Clara kneels, her fingers tracing Ben's name carved roughly into a wooden cross, the wood splintered as if mirroring her shattered world. The bracelet trembles in her grip, catching on a nail, its colors a defiant spark against the cemeteries. "Gray," she whispers, her voice cracking like parched earth. "I'll keep your land, Ben. I swear it. They won't take you from me again." The wind carries her words, mingling with the distant clatter of Willow Bend, a saloon's off-key piano, the creak of a wagon, the murmur of townsfolk on sagging porches, their eyes darting toward the widow with pity and unease. A hawk circles. Overhead, its cry sharp, as if the plains themselves echo Clara's resolve. A shadow darkens the grave, and heavy boots crunch the dirt. Sam Tucker, 40, looms, his grizzled face etched with hard lines under a black hat. His cold blue eyes glint like ice, and his pristine black coat, untouched by the town's dust, marks him as a man of power. A silver-handled revolver rests at his hip, its grip worn smooth by use. "Clara," he says, his voice smooth as whiskey, but laced with menace. "Grieving don't change facts. Your debt's due. That land's mine by rights." Clara rises slowly, her hand tightening around the bracelet, her jaw set despite the tremor in her shoulders. "Ben's land ain't yours to claim," she says, her voice low but firm, each word a stone laid against his threat. Tucker's smirk cuts like a blade, and he tosses a folded paper, a deed, onto the grave, where it lands with a soft thud, dust rising around it. "Court begs to differ," he sneers. "Sign it over, or you'll lose more'n dirt." "Before," Clara can respond, a new voice cuts through, light but edged. "Reckon a lady's got a say in her boy's resting place." Nate, 22, a drifter, leans against a rickety cemetery fence, his lanky frame slouched but alert. His patched duster jacket, faded from sun and wear, flaps in the breeze, and his hat, tilted low, shades dark eyes that flicker with curiosity and defiance. A rifle rests casually over his shoulder, its barrel glinting faintly. His youthful face, dusted with stubble, carries a hint of a smile, but his gaze locks on Tucker, unyielding. Tucker's hand twitches toward his revolver, his smirk fading. "Mind your road, boy," he growls, his spurs jangling as he steps closer. Nate doesn't move, his posture easy, but his eyes like a coiled spring. "Road's wide enough for now," he says, tipping his hat slightly, a gesture both polite and provocative. Tucker pauses, his eyes narrowing, then stalks off, his boots kicking up dust that swirls like a promise of trouble. Clara turns to Nate, her expression wary, the bracelet now tucked into her dress pocket, a hidden anchor. "I don't take charity," she says, her voice steady but guarded, brushing dust from her skirt. Nate's smile softens, genuine but tinged with respect. Ain't charity, ma'am. Just don't cotton to vultures circling a widow. He nods toward the grave, his voice dropping. Your boy. He'd want you fightin', I wager. Clara's eyes flicker with pain, then gratitude, but she straightens, her resolve a quiet storm. Then I'll fight, she says, her hand brushing the deed in her apron, smudging the ink with her thumb. As Clara walks toward Willow Bend's dusty street, the cemetery lingers behind, its crosses swaying in the wind, as if whispering Ben's name. The plains stretch endless, their golden grass shimmering under the sun, a vast and unforgiving witness to Clara's vow. In the distance, Tucker's men watch from the saloon's porch, their shadows merging with the town's decay, a silent threat that Clara's journey has only just ignited. Dusk cloaks Willow Bend in a soft purple haze, the sun sinking behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the golden plains. The air carries a chill, stirring dust that settles on the town's sagging shacks and the saloons flickering. Lanterns. Clara Monroe, 34, sits on the porch of her modest cabin at the town's edge, her auburn hair loose under her faded bonnet, catching the fading light. Her gray-blue dress is dusted with earth, and her hazel eyes, still raw from grief, trace the horizon where Ben's land lies, a patch of fertile soil now claimed by Sam Tucker. The woven bracelet, red and yellow threads frayed, rests in her lap, her fingers brushing it gently, as if touching Ben's laughter. The cabin's weathered boards creak under her weight, and a single candle flickers inside, its glow spilling through a cracked window, a fragile beacon in the gathering dark. Clara unfolds the smudged deed from her apron, its ink blurring under her thumb. Her jaw tightens as she reads Tucker's name scrawled across it, a theft of Ben's future. A faint creak breaks her focus. Nate, the drifter, steps from the shadows, his lanky frame outlined by the dusk. His patched duster jacket sways, and, his hat tilted low, shades dark eyes that hold a quiet empathy. His rifle leans against his shoulder, a silent companion. Thought you might need company, ma'am, he says, his drawl soft but steady, leaning against a post. Clara's eyes narrow, wary but softening. I don't trust easy, she says, folding the deed. Why are you lingering? Nate pulls a small carved wooden horse from his pocket, its edges worn smooth, and sets it on the porch rail. Lost someone too, he says, his voice low. Know what it's like to fight for what's theirs. Clara's gaze lingers on the horse, her fingers tightening around the bracelet, a shared ache passing between them. A distant clatter interrupts, hooves pounding the plains, dust rising under the fading sky. Clara stands, her hand slipping the deed into her pocket, her posture stiffening. Tucker's men, she mutters, recognizing the sound. Nate's eyes sharpen, his hand resting on his rifle. They don't scare easy, he says, nodding toward the saloon, where lanterns glow brighter now, casting silhouettes of rough men inside. Clara's voice hardens. Neither do I. She steps inside, returning with a worn leather journal. Ben's sketches of the land, filled with childish drawings of wheat and rivers. She opens it, showing Nate a page where Ben scrawled, Mama's home. This ain't just dirt, she says, her voice trembling but fierce. It's his dream. Nate nods, his smile faint but resolute. Then we'll hold it, he says, a quiet pact forming. The hooves grow louder, and 3 riders emerge from the dusk, their faces shadowed under wide hats, revolvers glinting at their hips. The leader, Jace, a wiry man with a scarred lip, halts before the cabin, his horse snorting. Tucker says sign the deed, widow, he snarls, tossing a match that sparks in the dirt. Or we burn what's left of you. Clara steps forward, the bracelet now tied around her wrist, its threads vivid against her skin. Tell Tucker to come himself, she says, her voice a blade, eyes locked on Jace. Nate shifts, his rifle now in hand, a subtle warning. Jace laughs, harsh and cold, but his horse rears as a gust sweeps dust across the porch, obscuring the riders. "You'll beg soon enough," he spits, then wheels away, his men following, their silhouettes swallowed by the plains. Clara exhales, her hand brushing the journal, her resolve afire kindled by Ben's memory. Nate picks up the wooden horse, tucking it away. "They'll be back," he says, his voice calm but heavy. Clara meets his gaze, the bracelet a quiet pulse against her wrist. "Let 'em come," she says, her voice steady, the plains endless, whisper urging her on. The cabin, with its creaking boards and candlelight, stands as a fragile fortress, its shadows dancing with the weight of Clara's vow. Dawn breaks over Willow Bend, the sky a pale gold, painting the golden grasslands in soft hues that belie the tension gripping the town. A faint haze of dust lingers, stirred by the restless wind that whistles through the weathered shacks and the saloon's sagging porch. Clara Monroe, 34, stands at the edge of her cabin's small plot, her auburn hair pinned tightly under her faded bonnet, her gray-blue dress streaked with dirt from sleepless nights. Her hazel eyes, fierce yet shadowed by grief, scan the horizon. Where Ben's land lies, a fertile stretch now marked by Tucker's fences. The woven bracelet, its red and yellow threads vivid, is tied securely around her wrist, a quiet pulse of Ben's memory. In her hands, she grips Ben's leather journal, its pages of childish sketches, wheat fields, a river, pressed close to her chest, as if shielding his dreams from the encroaching threat. Nate, 22, crouches nearby, his lanky frame half hidden. In the tall grass, his patched duster jacket blending with the earth. His hat, tilted low, shades dark eyes that dart toward the plains, where a faint dust trail snakes closer. His rifle rests across his knees, and the carved wooden horse in his pocket presses against his side, a reminder of his own loss. "They're coming," he mutters, his drawl low but urgent, nodding toward the approaching riders. Clara's grip tightens on the journal, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. "Let 'em try," she says, her eyes narrowing, the plain's vastness fueling her defiance. The dust trail resolves into 5 riders, led by Jace, the wiry man with a scarred lip, his revolver glinting under the rising sun. Beside him Tucker's men, rough and armed, fan out, their horses snorting, hooves churning the grass. Jace halts, his sneer twisting as he spots Clara. "Tucker's patience is gone, widow," he calls, his voice sharp as a blade. "Sign the deed, or we take it by fire." He lights a torch, its flame crackling, and tosses it toward a dry patch of grass near Clara's cabin. The fire catches, small but hungry, smoke curling into the dawn sky. Clara steps forward, her journal clutched like a shield, the bracelet gleaming on her wrist. "You'll burn nothing but your own soul," she says, her voice ringing with a mother's fury, unflinching as the flames creep closer. Nate rises, his rifle aimed, his stance calm but unyielding. "Back off, Jace," he says, his tone even, but laced with steel. The riders laugh, but their hands hover near their guns, wary of the drifter's steady gaze. A tense silence falls, broken only by the fire's crackle and the wind's moan. Clara's eyes flick to the journal, a sketch of Ben's river catching the dawn's light, and her resolve hardens. She kneels briefly, scooping dirt to smother the fire's edge, her hands blackened but determined. "This land's my boys," she says, standing, her voice a quiet storm. "You'll have to kill me first." Jace's sneer falters, his torch wavering, but a shout from town draws his attention. A frail figure, Mary, 60, the cornbread seller with a gray bun and brown shawl, stumbles from her shack, waving a broom. "Leave her be!" she cries, her voice thin but brave. Jace laughs, spurring his horse toward her, but Nate fires a warning shot into the dirt, kicking up dust. "Next one's yours," he says, his dark eyes cold. Jace hesitates, his men shifting uneasily, then wheels his horse. "You're digging your own grave, widow," he snarls, tossing the torch into the grass before riding off. leaving a trail of smoke and trampled earth. Clara rushes to stamp out the new flames, her dress singed, her hands trembling but relentless. Nate joins her, using his jacket to beat the fire, their shadows merging in the dawn's glow. Mary shuffles closer, her eyes wet with fear and admiration, offering a small loaf of cornbread. "You're stronger than most, Clara," she says, her voice soft. Clara takes the loaf, her fingers brushing the bracelet, her eyes distant but resolute. "For Ben, I have to be," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. The plains, scarred by smoke and hoofprints, stretch silent, their golden grass whispering of battles yet to come, as Clara's vow burns brighter than any flame. Midday sun scorches Willow Bend, its heat pressing down like a heavy hand, turning the golden grasslands into a shimmering mirage. Dust clings to the town's weathered shacks, and the saloon's porch creaks under the weight of curious onlookers. Clara Monroe, 34, stands in a dry riverbed beyond the town, her auburn hair tangled under her faded bonnet, her grey-blue dress singed at the hem from Jace's fire. Her hazel eyes, raw with grief yet burning with purpose, trace the cracked earth where Ben's sketches promised a river. The woven bracelet, red and yellow threads vivid, circles her wrist, its weight a quiet anchor. In her hands she holds Ben's leather journal, its pages open to a drawing of a wheat field, the pencil lines smudged by her trembling fingers. The riverbed, with its parched stones and whispering grass, feels alive, a silent mirror to Clara's breaking heart. Nate, 22, stands nearby, his lanky frame tense, his patched duster jacket streaked with soot. His hat shades dark eyes that scan the horizon, his rifle slung over his shoulder, the carved wooden horse in his pocket, a hidden ache. "Tucker's men ain't far," he says, his drawl low, nodding toward a dust trail snaking from the plains. Clara's gaze doesn't shift, her voice soft but heavy. "This is where Ben saw life," she says, tracing the journal's drawing. "I see death everywhere else." Nate steps closer, his boots crunching the dry earth, his expression softening. "He's still here, ma'am," he says, touching his pocket where the horse rests. "In you." Clara's eyes meet his, a flicker of gratitude drowned by a wave of sorrow. A memory stirs, unbidden, a flashback of Clara and Ben, 8, in this riverbed 2 years ago, under a golden sunset. Ben, with freckled cheeks and bright hazel eyes, hands her the woven bracelet, his small fingers proud. "For you, Mama," he says, grinning, pointing to the dry bed. "We'll make a river here someday." Clara laughs, her hair free, her dress unmarred by grief, tucking the bracelet into her pocket. The memory fades, and Clara's breath catches, her fingers clutching the journal so tightly the leather creaks. "I failed him," she whispers, her voice breaking, tears tracing dusty trails down her cheeks. "I couldn't save him, Nate. What good's a mother who lets her boy die?" Nate kneels beside her, his hand hovering, hesitant, then resting lightly on her shoulder. "You're fighting for him now," he says, his voice raw. "That's more'n most." The dust trail grows closer and hooves thunder, shattering the moment. Jace and 4 riders crest the ridge, their revolvers glinting, dust swirling like a storm. Jace, his scarred lip twisting, points at Clara. "Time's up, widow," he shouts, drawing his gun. "Sign the deed, or this riverbed's your grave." Clara stands, the journal pressed to her chest, the bracelet gleaming. "Ben's dream ain't yours to steal," she says, her voice steady despite her trembling hands, a mother's love eclipsing her fear. Nate raises his rifle, his stance protective, but Clara steps forward, her eyes locked on Jace. "You want this land? Take it over my body." A shot rings out, kicking up dirt at Clara's feet, and the riders laugh, their horses circling. Mary, 60, the cornbread seller, appears at the riverbed's edge, her grey bun loose, her brown shawl flapping, clutching a broom like a weapon. "You cowards!" she cries, her voice trembling but fierce, drawing townsfolk from their porches. Timid, faces peering, stirred by her courage. Jace's grin fades, his gun wavering, but he spurs his horse toward Clara. Nate fires, grazing Jace's arm, and the riders hesitate, their laughter silenced. Clara opens the journal, holding up Ben's drawing, her voice rising like a prayer. "This is my boy's heart," she says, tears falling. "You can't burn that." The riverbed, with its cracked earth and circling dust, holds its breath, as Clara's grief transforms into an unbreakable vow. Dusk paints Willow Bend in fiery hues, the sky a blaze of crimson and gold, as if the plains themselves are braced for bloodshed. Dust swirls down the town's central street, scarred by hoofprints, where the saloon's lanterns flicker like wary eyes. Clara Monroe, 34, stands in the street's heart, her auburn hair loose under her faded bonnet, her grey-blue dress singed and torn at the hem. Her hazel eyes, fierce with a mother's love, burn brighter than the sunset, locked on the horizon, where Ben's land lies. The woven bracelet, red and yellow threads vivid, circles her wrist, its threads catching the light like a flame. In one hand, she grips Ben's leather journal, its wheatfield sketch pressed to her chest. In the other, a borrowed revolver, heavy and unfamiliar, trembles slightly, but holds steady. The street, with its weathered shacks and silent saloon, feels alive, a crucible for Clara's vow. Nate, 22, stands beside her, his lanky frame taut, his patched duster jacket flapping in the wind. His hat shades dark eyes that scan the street, his rifle raised, the carved wooden horse in his pocket, a quiet anchor. "They're here," he says, his drawl low but resolute, nodding toward a dust cloud rolling from the plains. Mary, 60, the more cornbread seller, hovers near a shack, her grey bun frayed, her brown shawl clutched tight, a broom swapped for a pitchfork, her face etched with defiance. Townsfolk, timid men and women, peer from porches, their whispers rising like the wind, stirred by Clara's courage. Hooves thunder, and Sam Tucker emerges from the dust, his grizzled face cold under his black hat, blue eyes glinting like steel. His pristine black coat is untouched by the plains grit, and his silver-handled revolver gleams, a symbol of his ruthless claim. Jace, wiry with a scarred lip, rides beside him, his revolver drawn, sneering, flanked by 6 riders, their guns ready. Tucker halts, his horse snorting, and raises the forged deed, its ink stark against the crimson sky. "Last chance, Clara," he says, his voice smooth but venomous. "Sign, or Willow Bend burns with you." Clara steps forward, the journal held high, her voice ringing clear. "This land's my boy's," she says, the bracelet flashing. "You'll take it from my cold hands." A tense silence grips the street, broken by Jace's harsh laugh. "Burn her!" he shouts, firing a shot that splinters a shack's wall. Chaos erupts. Gunfire cracks like thunder, bullets kicking up dust. Clara dives behind a water trough, her revolver firing, her shots wild but determined, grazing a rider's arm. Nate returns fire, his rifle precise, dropping one man from his horse, dust billowing around him. Mary swings her pitchfork, tripping a rider's horse, sending the man sprawling, her frail frame fierce with purpose. Townsfolk, inspired, join in. Men hurl rocks, women swing pans, transforming the street into a battlefield of defiance. Tucker charges Clara, his revolver blazing, bullets chewing the trough. Clara rolls, her dress tearing, the journal slipping, but caught by her trembling hand. She rises, firing, her bullet striking Tucker's shoulder, blood staining his coat. He staggers, his face twisting with rage, but raises his gun again. Nate tackles him, the two grappling in the dust, fists and steel flashing. Clara runs to Nate's aid, but Jace grabs her, his revolver at her temple. "Sign it!" he snarls, his scarred lip curling. Clara's eyes lock on the bracelet, Ben's laughter echoing in her mind. With a surge of strength, she elbows Jace. His gun falling, and Nate's rifle butt cracks against his skull, sending him down. The riders falter, their numbers thinning, and Tucker, bloodied, crawls for his gun. Clara stands over him, revolver aimed, her voice steady. "This ends now," she says, the journal tucked under her arm, the bracelet a beacon of her vow. Tucker's eyes narrow, but the townsfolk close in, their makeshift weapons raised, a wall of courage forged by Clara's stand. "You're done," Nate says, his rifle trained, his dark eyes unyielding. Tucker spits, defeated, and limps away, his men dragging Jace, their shadows fading into the crimson dusk. Clara lowers her gun, her breath ragged, the bracelet warm against her wrist. Mary offers a trembling smile, her pitchfork planted in the dirt. The street, scarred by bullets and blood, stands silent, its dust settling like a vow fulfilled. The plains stretch beyond, their golden grass whispering Ben's name, as Clara's love proves stronger than any grave. Dawn breaks over Willow Bend, the sky a soft tapestry of gold and pink, as if the plains are exhaling their scars. The town's central street, scarred by yesterday's gunfire, lies quiet, dust settling like a gentle veil over bullet-ridden shacks and the saloon's splintered porch. Clara Monroe, 34, stands before her cabin, her auburn hair loose, catching the morning light, her faded bonnet tucked into her apron. Her grey-blue dress, singed and mended with fresh stitches, bears the marks of her fight, but her hazel eyes, once shadowed by grief, now hold a fragile hope. The woven bracelet, red and yellow threads vivid, circles her wrist, its warmth a quiet echo of Ben's love. In her hands, she holds Ben's leather journal, its wheatfield sketch now joined by a new page, a plan for a river channel drawn in her steady hand. The plains stretch beyond, their golden grass swaying, whispering Ben's dream as if the land itself breathes with her triumph. Nate, 22, leans against the cabin's porch rail, his lanky frame relaxed for the first time, his patched duster jacket dusted clean. His hat rests on a post, revealing dark eyes that carry a newfound peace, his rifle propped nearby. The carved wooden horse sits on the rail, its worn edges catching the dawn's glow, a silent tribute to his own lost kin. "You did it, ma'am," he says, his drawl soft, a faint smile breaking through. Clara shakes her head, her fingers brushing the bracelet. "We did," she says, her voice warm but firm, glancing at the townsfolk gathering nearby. Mary, 60, the cornbread seller, steps forward, her gray bun neat, her brown shawl draped proudly, offering a warm loaf wrapped in cloth. "For your boy's land," she says, her eyes glistening. Clara takes it, her hand lingering on Mary's, a bond forged in defiance. Other townsfolk approach, timid no more, a blacksmith with a shovel, a seamstress with seeds, a boy with a bucket, each offering tools for Ben's land. "We'll dig that river," the blacksmith says, his gruff voice earnest, inspired by Clara's stand. Clara's breath catches, her eyes sweeping over the crowd, seeing not pity, but purpose. She opens the journal, showing Ben's sketch, her voice steady. "This was Ben's dream," she says, the bracelet glinting. "A place for growing, for living. Let's make it real." The townsfolk nod, their murmurs rising like a gentle wind, the plain's golden expanse seeming to nod in agreement. A flashback flickers. Clara and Ben, 8 in the riverbed, laughing under a golden sunset. Ben ties the bracelet on her wrist, his freckled face beaming. "It's for forever, Mama," he says, pointing to the dry earth. "We'll make it green." The memory fades, and Clara smiles, a tear tracing her cheek, not of grief, but of love fulfilled. She tucks the journal into her apron, the bracelet a quiet pulse, and turns to Nate. "You stayin'?" she asks, her voice soft but hopeful. Nate picks up the wooden horse, his fingers tracing its edges. "Reckon I found a place worth fighting for," he says, his dark eyes meeting hers, a new chapter dawning. Clara leads the townsfolk toward Bend's land, a patch of fertile soil, now free of Tucker's fences. They carry shovels, seeds, and buckets, their shadows long in the dawn's light, merging with the plain's endless gold. The cemetery, with its crooked crosses, watches from the distance, Ben's grave a quiet sentinel, his bracelet binding, Clara to a legacy reborn. A voiceover, warm and reflective, closes the scene. No grave can hold a mother's love. Through dust and fire, Clara's vow stirred the plains, proving some dreams never die. The group fades into the horizon, dust trailing like a promise of life, the mountains glowing gold, a testament to love's enduring power. As the screen lingers on the sunrise, text appears, subtle and inviting. Did Clara's journey touch your heart? Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. How would you honor a loved one's dream?